So, to anyone who follows Texas politics, Dan Patrick is a very familiar name and a very familiar voice. So this last session, as everyone knows, I'm sure, he was the chair of the Education Committee in the Senate, also on finance and on transportation, so it was quite a busy session. And then with two additional sessions after that. As education chair, we had some pretty significant victories, increasing the number of charter schools, decreasing the number of tests. That was a big issue in this particular district, and it's why the Woodlands is part of the reason why the Woodlands is now represented with Representative Steve Toth, who is where? Wave to us. There we go. There's Steve Toth. It took several sessions to get the sonogram bill passed, but it was passed. And Dan has also worked quite hard on changing the 21 vote rule, which blocks a lot of good legislation. That's the kind of thing that takes multiple sessions to do. Senator Patrick takes on big issues, and he keeps after them session after session. And as we discussed a few weeks ago, the Texas Patriots PAC has endorsed Dan Patrick in the lieutenant governor's race. And when we discussed that, we asked, you all were talking about, how many of you have been listening to Dan Patrick, and some of your comments were, of course we've been listening to Dan Patrick, and we've listened to him so long that we just feel like we know his heart. He's a conservative, we've been listening, we know where he's going on things. So that was nice to hear, because we don't always have that kind of security with someone who is so strong as Dan is. The reason that the Texas Patriots PAC and I am so strongly in support of Dan Patrick as Lieutenant Governor really has less to do with his legislative record and a lot more to do with why we are here. We're conservative grassroots activists because we watched what was going on in Washington and on lower levels of government, and we decided that we had to get involved. And it was not enough to get on the buses and go to Washington, D.C. like the picture there behind Gordy. Of the 1.67 million people, they didn't listen to us. We had to get involved in elections. But it wasn't just getting involved in elections, although you have to do that. We also have to have legislative partners. And what happened 2 sessions ago was really key. Dan Patrick established the Tea Party Caucus and the Tea Party Advisory Committee. And that was a group of the largest Tea Parties around the state who were not just invited to come to Austin, but really actively solicited to be involved in that process. And it was not unusual to get an email from Dan at 2 or 3 in the morning, several times a week, about what was going on in Austin. And I'll tell you, that was so critical because we are not political people who've been involved in this process forever. We have to learn how things work and when we can intervene. And so to know the people who were involved and to understand the issues and the personalities and the multiple things in play, to get a bill passed, it's not just about this one particular issue. It's, you have somebody who's authoring this bill and this bill and this bill. It's very complicated, and understanding that was something that Dan did a wonderful job of clarifying for us, how we could get involved. So we appreciated that. And all 4 of these candidates in the lieutenant governor's race, they're all good men. And any of them would be a better lieutenant governor than anyone in the Obama administration. But we're here to pick the best one. And there is no other candidate in the lieutenant governor's race who has actively engaged grassroots activists the way Dan Patrick has. So we need to find our legislative partners who will move the ball forward on our conservative agenda over time. You can't get everything you want at once. You got to keep working and keep working and keep working. We need somebody who will also effectively message to the public, because it's not just Tea Party people that elect our folks. Conservative values apply to everyone, and we have to be able to project beyond our little bubble here in Montgomery County to persuade other people that conservative underpinnings are good for everyone. So Senator Patrick has a strong record, a legislative record of doing that, and it's why we support him. And at this point, I will ask you to please welcome Senator Dan Patrick.
Thank you, Julie. I'm taking her on the road everywhere I go. That's awesome. Thank you. Good evening. I want to tell you something that, first of all, it's good to be home for a while. We are still in a second session. We still have one issue, the transportation issue, that has passed 3 times, but you didn't get the final vote on the filibuster night, so we're taking that up again. And that's turned into be a little bit of a quagmire. I'll talk about that a little bit. We might have another filibuster before this is all over. And we may take up other issues if Governor Perry had something more to the call. We're there through, potentially, we could go through August 1st. And so we're not finished yet. I was supposed to leave here tonight and drive up tomorrow, but now it looks like it's sad to be back until Friday or Saturday because the House didn't vote out the bill yesterday. They're still looking at that issue, I think, on Thursday. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And speaking of the House, besides Representative Steve Toth, who did a great job as your freshman, Brandon Creighton, who's the Republican caucus chair, is here. Brandon, where are you? Running, have you officially announced?
Not yet.
Okay. He's thinking about running for something, okay? Might start with an A and have a G and have a commissioner, I don't know. That's up to him to say, but I know a lot of good folks are talking about a lot of issues. I want to say something right off the bat of how important and how meaningful your endorsement and your support of me is to my campaign. And also, I realize now that I'm in this race, everything I say can and will be used against me moving forward in the campaign. But I've always spoken from the heart, and I've never held back. And so, whatever it is, it's going to be a long 8 months. There'll be a lot of things said on the campaign trail. And Julie's right. First of all, we have 3 very credible, good people. They're all friends. And it's going to be an interesting race over the next 8 months. But I want to tell you right up front, it was important to have your support. So far, I would say of all the people we've contacted, Tea Party, Republican grassroots, SRECs, precinct chairs, literally, we're about a 98% positive response rate. And it's been very gratifying. We're building a whole army around the state, and we're going to continue to do that. I also know that some of you had 2 questions, and I believe in answering questions. And the first question is, Dan, why did you say you were voting for David Dewhurst? And let's just say, I could be flippant and say, I've cast 16,000 votes, which I have, plus in the 4 sessions, and I think the next report cards will come out. I'll still be number 1 or number 2 with, I'll have the most conservative record over 16,000 votes, and I don't know how Birdwell and myself will come out. We're usually number 1 and 2 in the Senate, so I'll still be the most conservative member since I've been there. And I could say something flippant, like that's one vote, that's the bad vote. That would be disingenuous to you and disingenuous to Lieutenant Governor. At the time that I said on my radio show I was going to vote for him, I thought it was my best choice. And, Jerry Patterson, Todd Staples, almost every senator, at the end, all of us said we were supporting Dewhurst 4 days before the final election, and that Wednesday and Thursday before. No one got heavily involved in the race that I know of for the first round. Everyone thought, let Ted, let the other candidates all have a fair shot, see who gets the runoff. And so at the end of the second round, I've been on the radio, some of you listen today. I've been on the radio for 23 years. I've never not answered a question. If you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you what I think. And I tried to walk that fine line because I like both There are different candidates. I tried to walk the fine line. A guy named Lilo, I remember it like it was yesterday. In fact, he called Paul today as I was driving here because Paul had been to the last hour. Lilo called me on the Wednesday before this second election. He said, Dan, I don't know who to vote for. Who are you voting for? I said, I'm just staying. I'm not going to say who I'm voting for because I think both men deserve to. And he said, well, wait a minute, Dan. You've always told us. You support all these candidates, against whatever the issues were. And I went home that night, and I really thought about that. And I said, you know what? That's not being honest with my listeners. And so I posted on my Facebook, I am voting for David Dewhurst, and some people were shocked. And so I own it. That was then, this is now, a different race, different issues. Ted is doing an incredible job. In fact, I said on the radio tonight, he did something yesterday that was very significant. He went and addressed the Black Alliance. We're never going to get African Americans to support our party if we don't go and talk to them first. And so Ted is doing even better than I thought he would. I knew exactly what he would be doing as a senator, but he's made everybody up there nervous, and that's a good thing. I have my total support, and in the end, I own my vote, but in the end, the best guy got there for what we needed, as it turned out. Now, the second issue, some of you have said, now what about that interview between the two of you? Because I know a few people have asked me. You know, I've been on the radio, now done this talk show for 23 years, done thousands of shows. That wasn't one of my better moments. And the truth is that, and even, I don't think Ted knows this, we've done a number of events together, we're good, and no issues there, but I wasn't, once you get on the ballot, which I'll get on the ballot December 9th, the last day, or whatever that last day is. Once you get on the ballot, then I can't be on the radio because of FCC equal fairness. Now, I can be on the radio now because I'm not on the ballot, and that's the rules. So I wasn't even on the radio in those days. People said, well, you had this interview. So I didn't know Ted was going to be on. He didn't know I was going to be on. The only reason I was there that day is legitimately I can be on for a news story, and that was the day that the Obama decision came down to the Supreme Court, and I came to talk about that. And Ted called in, and I really got defensive about the Senate. It had nothing to do with Dewhurst. It was defending the Senate. And I just, you know, I stopped the rainy day money from being spent. We passed the sonogram bill. We'd cut the budget, and I felt like we as senators had done some good things. I just took it personally, and I shouldn't have. And like I said, it wasn't one of my better interviews. But those are those two issues and why they happened and how they happened. And here we are now. So why am I running for lieutenant governor? But before I talk about that, I want to talk about where we are as a state, where we are as a party. I think that as conservatives, and we had a lot of great freshmen along with Steve Toth in the House. I mean, a lot. How many, Steve, were there? Like 15 or 16 total?
29 Republicans.
29 Republican freshmen. I'm thinking of the Tarrant County, Denton County group. There's about 15
alone,
from that area. And they stuck together. And it's important for them to stick together because there are a lot of people who don't want grassroots people in office. They don't like Ted in Washington. There's still a lot who don't like me in Austin. And if we don't stand together, we will get picked off one by one. And what we have to do, and I've said this to Julie and the other Tea Party folks in our caucus meetings, the grassroots has done really a great thing in getting people elected. Now we have to get them to the next level. And that level is positions of power, positions of authority. You know, I was elected in 06 against all odds, they said. There weren't Tea Parties then, but the grassroots came. I was kind of the first really pure grassroots guy elected. And I'm now the first grassroots guy to be chairman of a major committee. And if I win this election, I'll be the first grassroots guy to hold statewide office at that level. We've never had a grassroots guy, although Rick Perry is pretty grassroots. That's not really how he got there. And so we have to now build on our team. And so what I've been meeting with some of the freshman House members, and we also had some great freshman senators. Donna Campbell was terrific, and she stood up to Wendy Davis and did a great job. And Donna, she won her election when no one thought she would. She won on the grassroots, and she'll do fine. And now because she drew a 2-year term like I did, and half of us are 2 and half of us are 4. And so she drew a 2-year term, and I think she's proven her mettle this last month, and she'll win even if she has an opponent. But what we have to do as grassroots voters is we have to support our freshmen, even when if they make a mistake or they vote, on an issue that you just disagree with, because it's impossible to please 100% of the people 100% of the time. And you look at their total record and you say, does this person represent my views most of the time? And the reason I say that is I just kind of see it a little bit from time to time of people work really hard to get someone elected, and then they cast a vote and they say, oh gosh, that's not who I thought. And you have to trust someone that maybe they made it for a reason that you're not aware of, or maybe they just made the wrong vote. But give them a chance to succeed, give them a chance to learn, give them a chance to grow, because it doesn't do us any good to keep sending a new wave of freshmen to the beach. We have to send our team in. Now, if someone starts voting a lot opposite the way that they said they were going to and how they campaign, that's a different issue. But what we have to do is now grow this freshman team we have in the House and the new members in the Senate. Kelly Hancock came in as a freshman senator, Ken Paxton came in as a freshman senator, Larry Taylor came in as a freshman senator, Charles Schwartz. And at the end of the day, they did a terrific job. In fact, on the filibuster night, that day started with Kelly Hancock and Ken Paxton and myself, and there was another, and Donna Birdwell, Donna Campbell, Donna Birdwell, and Brian Campbell. They kind of vote the same. And we said, look, if there's going to be a filibuster tonight, we need to call the question. We need to move to call the previous question. We cannot let this bill go down. Now that is, you heard Harry Reid talk about the nuclear option. Well, ending a filibuster with moving to call the question is considered the nuclear option by some senators. And the reason is because if you take away a member's right to filibuster, then a member never can really stand and speak out on an issue that they feel is important. And remember, a filibuster, the way Wendy did it, only works if you have the clock on your side. You know, you can filibuster, like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz filibustered, to make the point and to bring an issue up. But the only way you kill an issue is if you can talk long enough till the clock runs out. And so in her case, and we could spend a half hour on why we got to that point, but when you do have the majority, as we do, when you have a 30-day session, as we did, when you only have 4 bills to pass, as we had, and 3 of them don't get to the floor until 12 hours to go in the 30-day session, there was obviously some bad planning somewhere. And so that day, it was clear. I thought Wendy could talk that long. I think she could have talked longer. But it was clear she would be able to talk that long. What we really thought the Democrats were going to do is each one would stand up for a while and talk for a half hour before she had the filibuster and cut down on her time. But right out of the gate, she went. We had 3 bills to pass that day: the transportation bill, the criminal justice bill, and the pro-life omnibus package. One bill was mine, the RU-486. One was Senator Bob Lewis, and one was Senator Glenn Hager. And Hager did a great job 3 times on that bill. And so we decided we would call the question. And what you need is one person to stand, and you need 5 seconds. So I had the 5 seconds. It was Birdwell, Campbell, Paxton, Taylor, Hancock, and I think one more. And I stood up in the Republican caucus, and I knew that some of our members didn't want to do it because some of our members respect the tradition. And I also knew whoever called it would be persona non grata next session. We probably would have a tough time getting a bill passed because a lot of the Democrats would have been very angry and others would have been angry. And I knew that was my last day in the Senate. At least I thought that was my last day in the Senate. We're still here. And so I made the decision the best person to do it was me, because no sense one of the other freshmen being punished for doing that. And so I stood up in the caucus and I said, look, I think we need to move to call the previous question if she goes to the point where we could kill the clock. And I'm the best person to do it because I'm not coming back. This is my last day. That was the first day I've told anyone that. People thought maybe I was running for lieutenant governor, and I hadn't made a decision until we got very close to the end. And I said, here's the deal. And someone said, yeah, but this is the tradition. You just can't end this tradition. And I said, well, here's the deal. You know, I'm not trying to get biblical on you, but I'm a Christian and I don't apologize for it. I said, well, when Jesus came, his criticism of the Pharisees was that they were more concerned about the rules than they were concerned about the people they ruled. And if we allow babies to die and women to get less than adequate health care, then what we're saying is we care more about our rules. I don't want to be a modern day senatorial Pharisee. I want to move the call the question, and we're going to do it. So what you do is you get your green card. We have a green card with all our names on it. That's how we get our 21 votes. And I walked up to the lieutenant governor at 11 that morning, and I gave him. I said, we have the 5 seconds. And when I didn't have 60. You have to have 16 votes. You have to have a majority. I didn't have 16 votes. 11 in the morning. And some of the members said, let it play out. Well, it played out. By 7:30 or 8 o'clock that night, we had 19 votes. All the Republicans, except one, and Eddie Lucio, they were ready to call the question. And I give Eddie Lucio, the Democrat from the Valley, my courageous award for this session, because he was the lone Democrat that stood for that bill, and a lot of Democrats. It's pretty tough to stand alone. I've done it many times. I've been the only vote, or Birdwell and I have been the only vote sometimes. It's not easy to stand alone, but particularly on that issue. So we had 19 or 20 at the end. And then you know how it ended up. You have to be called upon to move the previous question. I wasn't called upon, and then the time ran out and it ended in chaos. I did call to move the previous question, but it wasn't until 15 before midnight. It was the first time I was called up by Senator Bob Duncan, who had taken the chair. We still had time to pass the bill, but it didn't happen. That's in the rearview mirror. Now we move forward. But that's the thing. That's the kind of leadership I think we need as Lieutenant Governor and Governor. I think Greg Abbott would be a great governor. We have done so much. We've done a lot of good things. And as I said last year, the Lieutenant Governor gets the credit for the good things, the Senate passes, and he gets the blame for the bad things. And we've done a lot of good things. But there's so much left to be done. And I think we need a change in leadership to get us to that next step. And as a senator, I can do so much. And as Julie said, I learned one thing about watching the cruise rehearsals. It's not about what you did, it's about what you're going to do. And that's one advantage that every new person who runs for office has. They don't have a record, so they can talk about what they're going to do. And that's only the thing they talk about, because that's their sphere of influence, what they're going to do. And so I'm not going to dwell a lot on what I've done, but I will say that the sonogram bill, we passed the charter bill this session, we changed the testing 15 to 5, put a focus on career, the business tax cut for the businesses of $1 million. I want to get rid of the franchise tax totally, and the SONA and the In God We Trust and Under God We in place. I passed a lot of major legislation. I'm kind of as far as I can go. The issues of illegal immigration and border security is a federal responsibility, but it's our problem. And I don't know who's going to be the next president. I don't know if it's Ted Cruz or Rand Paul or Rick Perry or Jeb Bush, or I have no idea. We don't know. It's too early to tell. I know, but whomever. I don't know what success there'll be, even if they win the White House. Will they get the votes in Congress to do what we need to do to secure our border? We just picked up a drug cartel guy today. We had the DPS in a shooting the other day. It's a very dangerous border, and it really has little to do with illegal immigration. It has to do with law and order. It has to do with protecting our families and protecting our neighborhoods against terrorists and against the drug cartel. And we can do things in this state, and we've done a better job, but there's a lot more we can do. And one of the reasons I voted against the budget this session, I was one of only 4 senators who voted against the budget. There were a lot of good things in the budget. But I voted against the budget for several reasons. There are other questions I can answer those later. But one is we cut border security spending. And we cut the spending that focused on criminal gang activity. And we should not be cutting spending in that area. There are certain areas, we all want to limit government, we all want to spend less, but there are certain areas that we have to be sure we spend enough. And one of those areas, first and foremost, is to protect life and property. Property is stuff, we can always replace our stuff, but it is to protect our property, but most importantly, protect our lives. And if we don't do our best in Texas, and we've done better, but there's so much left to be done, then we're all at risk. And we'll always be at risk. You're never going to close it off 100% as long as the federal government doesn't do it, but there's so much more we can do with our sheriffs, with our DPS, with our Border Patrol, with our Texas Rangers, with our National Guard, and that's priority number 1. And we just haven't had a big enough push on that issue. The second issue that I talked about this, going back to 1997, those of you who've been listening a long time remember, and for the last couple of years it hasn't been an issue because of the downturn in the economy, but it's our property taxes. And we have not had the leadership push, in my view, to get it done. And you have to know that when things, and the House members know, Brandon and Steve know, if the Speaker wants something to get done, it usually gets done. And if he doesn't want it to get done, it doesn't get done. And if there's something the Lieutenant Governor really wants done, and we're a little bit more prickly in the Senate, it has a better chance of getting done. And if he doesn't want it done, it has a pretty big chance of not happening. And so I just go back to the issue of property taxes, that you should not have to rent your home after it's paid for. And you should not have to move to another neighborhood because you're taxed out of the one you live in. So, to me, our border security and our property taxes are two of the biggest issues. The other issue that I'm very concerned if I'm not back is our education reforms. I'm afraid they will be peeled back. There was some resistance to things we wanted to do, and at the end, I wouldn't yield. And I believe in loyalty, and I believe in respect of leadership. But if I know I'm right on the issue, if I know you're right on the issue, if I know our membership is right on the issue, then we need to move forward. And I'm concerned that some of the reforms we made this time could be peeled back next session. And so those are three key issues. The franchise tax, along with property taxes. We need to totally revise our tax system in Texas. And we can do it in a lot of different ways. So, but at the end of the day, the biggest reason I decided to run, and I can tell you this is not the easiest way. My wife always likes to say, I always take that road less traveled, or that Garth Brooks song about standing outside the fire. I could have run for the Senate and probably not had an opponent, and won, and not have to go out and raise millions of dollars, not be the victim of what I'm sure will be attack ads, as Ted was, and not have to work the entire state the next 8 months. But it came down to either not going back or stepping up. And the reason I say not going back is I believe, again, I'm running a positive campaign. I'm not running against David Dewhurst or Jerry or Todd. I'm running against the Democrats and Wendy Davis and the Obama administration, and I'm running for our conservative vision. But I feel like we need energy and passion, and we need, it's time for new leadership. This is going to be an historic election. So let me just go back for a second. So my wife and I talked about it a lot, and at the end of the day, we made that decision to do that. I met with some of the freshman House members the other day, and now that I feel a young 63, but now that I'm 63, it's not about a long political career. If I win, I'll serve 2 terms and step aside, because I don't believe anyone should own the job forever. I voted for that bill that we passed out of the Senate that would put term limits on elected officials, and we wanted to amend it to include legislators, because I do believe, I don't care how good you are, there's always time to move on and say, I've done that. And let new people come in and new ideas. There's no question in my mind that we've made some of these education reforms, and I don't want to be negative against our former 2 education chairmen, but had Steve lost and had Shapiro not retired, I don't think we'd be down to 5 tests. And it's just, you need new ideas, and you need a new look at things. And so, for me, I just made the decision I could take the easy way. And a few of the senators said, Dan, why are you doing this? Our chances of winning are pretty good, but there's still no guarantee. You can be senator for as long as you want. And I said, why would I want to do that? I don't care about being called senator. I mean, it's nice. I prefer to be called Dan. I didn't run for the title. And why do I just want to be senator? I want to get things done. I didn't go there to be away from my wife, and now I have 2 grandchildren coming, and one already, in fact, last night was his birthday. I don't want to spend 7 months as I have this session. I've been home very little this session because I'm on finance, transportation, criminal justice, chair of education. I'm probably the busiest workload of any member. But I don't want to go out there and spend 7 months away from my family to do nothing. And even if we're not successful, I want to be in a position where we can attempt to bring about the changes we need. And I didn't feel like if I went back this session, I would be in that position, since I voted. Some of you are very familiar that some people were unhappy with me for voting against the budget, and pushing ahead on education. Some people didn't agree with above my pay grade. And so I knew next session I would be on the back bench. And so I looked at that. I looked at the fact that I felt we needed new leadership, and I looked at my record, and again, my 16,000 votes, I'm pretty rock solid on where I stand on these issues. You don't have to wonder what I'm going to do. I don't wake up in the morning wondering what I stand for. I know exactly where I am, every day on the issues. It doesn't mean I don't listen and I'm not willing to think about things, but on the core fundamental issues of spending, of social issues, of our need to focus on infrastructure in our state in a responsible way, save the rainy day fund, those issues I know exactly where. I don't have to think about it. I don't go and say, well, I wonder where everyone is today. And I don't care if it's 30 to 1 and I'm the one. Brian Burke, there are a lot of 29 to 2 votes. Well, this year it was 23 because Donna joined us. So that's fine. And it's the same way in the House. Those freshmen don't wake up in the morning wondering where they stand. And there were 4 of us who voted against the budget in the Senate. How many, Steve, in the 29 in the House? Roughly 29.
Thanks to Brandon's leadership, there were about 29 of us that voted against it.
Yeah, and you would have thought by reading some of the articles that Dan Patrick had just, I don't know what crime I committed by voting no on the budget. And I said to one senator who was very critical of my vote, I said, I don't answer to other senators. I answer to the people. And I'm happy to go back home and explain my vote. I don't need to, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I don't need to explain my vote to another senator. Let him explain his vote to his voters. And so here's where we are. Just to let you know, it's always good to support someone who may win. We're 8 points. These are the polls. No shenanigans with the polls, straight up numbers. We're 8 points ahead in Harris County of the Lieutenant Governor. This was as of May 15th. That was before the meltdown. And in Harris County, we're 40 points ahead of Todd and Jerry. With your support in Montgomery County, I think we could be very successful. And I'll be up here working as hard with you, earn every vote. And I think we'll do very well across the state. We're second statewide. Dewhurst is about 20 points ahead of me. That's not a big issue. He's 45 up on Cruz in January. And the campaign hasn't started. So, and we're about 15 points ahead of Jerry and Todd statewide. So we're poised. We're in a very good position. And I think we have a great shot of being in the runoff. If you win Harris County, Montgomery County, and Fort Bend, I don't want to say it assures you of being in the runoff, but it gets you a long way.
Is that supposed to sound like Tom and Jerry?
Yeah, Tom. No, those are good. Look, those are good guys. I like both of them. And it would have been easier for me to step out and not get in, and my wife. But I'm not so sure in a three-way race that one of them would have prevailed. I'm just not sure. So in this four-way race, and I hope it stays a four-way race, I think we'll have a runoff, I think we'll do fine. So that's kind of where this campaign came about. And again, I'm at that point in my life, I'm going to do the best I can. And at the end of the day, the victory is in God's hands. My job is to work as hard as I can. And whatever happens, everyone's going to be held more accountable. I think because I'm in the race. Last time it was Ted and David. This time it's going to be 3 and David. Because Jerry, very sharp, and Todd's very sharp. And so I look forward to those issues. Let's talk real quickly about the campaign, and then I'll take some Q&A. Let me talk a little bit about the session. Why did I vote against the budget? A couple of reasons. There was a connection bill, House Bill 1025. And I don't know if you're aware of, if you know what the System Benefit Fund is, but the System Benefit Fund is a fund that collects less than $1 from you every month on your electric bill to help pay the electric bill of people who are poor. And it brings in about $300 million a year. And of that, not all of it is accessed. Not all the poor send in and take the money. So it's been growing to the point we have $860 million in it, sitting there. And originally the idea was, let's get rid of the money, let's get rid of the fund, and basically everyone who had an electric meter will get $100 back if you kind of divide it over. Everyone was going to get a check for $100. It's just the way to send the money back. Since we don't have an income tax, thank goodness, in Texas, and we don't want one, there was no way to kind of rebate it through that way. So that was the plan. And then at the last minute over in the House, and Steve and Brandon can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they didn't have the votes. And so Sylvester Turner, a Democrat, cut a deal. And he said, I want $500 million of that to just be written in checks to the poor. And Republican leadership accepted that. And I know our Republicans here voted against it. There were 4 or 5 others in the Senate who voted against it. But it is, I had a Democrat senator come up to me and said, I can't believe you guys did this. Because I can't believe you'll vote for it. That is the biggest wealth redistribution we've ever seen. So of that 860 million, 500 million is going to go to the poor. I'm not sure what the checks and balances are, what kind of one lump sum. And then the other 360 million slowly over the next 3 years will go down. And then the Republicans are going to say that you got a $300 million tax cut, because that's about what it takes in. What you're really going to get is a tax cut of about 60 cents a month. And I don't call that a real tax cut. So that really bothered me. The second thing that bothered me was the flip-flop on the rainy day fund of putting some money into education. And I was all for adding some money back, but I didn't like how they made the flip at the end, and I didn't like the fact that we cut border security funding back, and I didn't like the fact that we cut the funding back against fighting criminal gangs, which is a real threat to us. So there were some, but the 1025 really bothered me, because what it was is it was a way to get the Democrats to support the budget. And my thinking was, why didn't you go to those 29 brave Republicans who voted against it and ask them, what do they need to vote for the budget? Why are we going to the other side? So that's why I voted against the budget. We did in education, we did reduce the test 15 to 5. We put more focus on career. That bill passed without a no vote in either chamber. It's the right thing to do. We did not back up on accountability. We've not backed up on rigor. In fact, we've just increased. We put a focus on career training. Now, look, not every child is not going to get a 4-year degree. Okay? I think everyone should have the opportunity to get a 4-year degree. But statistically, only 21% of all 8th graders today in Texas go on to get any type of post-12th grade education. Only 20%. Now, we have to flip-flop that number. We have about 80% of jobs require something beyond the 12th grade. You need a sports certificate, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, some type of additional education. And we have a dropout rate in our schools. When I went in as education chair, I wasn't worried, and I had a specific goal when I went in. Focus on career and reduce the testing, because the testing killing our kids and killing our teachers. And we have, if you go look across the state, 20% dropout rate. You say, well, that's not too good, but it's not too bad, 80%. Yeah, but I think it's too high. We ought to be in single digits. But if you look at our inner cities, you have, in some districts, a 60% dropout rate. If you look at Dallas, Houston, El Paso, San Antonio, and Austin, our inner city schools, our Latino and African American males are dropping out, depending on the district, anywhere from 40 to 60%. It hovers a little, on average, a little lower than 50. But I talked to Harold Dutton. He said I could use his name when he told me. Harold Dutton is a Democrat from Houston. He tracked the number of students who were in middle school and finished, and his tracking showed 68% of the kids dropped out. We have no future as a state, and we have no future as a country if half of the next majority population doesn't even have a high school degree. And why don't they? Well, we were forcing a lot of those kids to take courses that were not relevant to them. Courses that were going to prepare them for college when they weren't going to college. And we have all these students who we automatically send off to community college, and where the graduation rate in some community colleges is less than 10% for a technical degree. So my whole focus, I'm not worried about the kids in the Woodlands. I'm not worried about the kids where I live in Cypress. I'm not worried about the town ball kids. The middle class kids, black, white, or brown, they're going to do fine. My whole focus was on that 20% who are dropping out, to give them relevancy, to make them interested in something in school. And so we created a new diploma, including a career degree, which will be rigorous courses in that area. Why force a kid to take calculus who's not going to college? How about just basic accounting? How about basic where you write a check? Yeah, arithmetic would start. So I want to get our dropout rate down. I want every student to come out ready to go to college or ready to go to work. That's what we need. And so that was a real passion for me this session, and we were fairly successful in that. Those are the big issues: the budget issue, the education issue, this session, and then we got to this filibuster issue at the end here. And we may, again, have another one on transportation. So with that, let me conclude, and I'll take questions. And again, thank you for standing with Julie and the board and the membership, for standing with me. You do know my heart. You know where I am. If you've listened to the radio station, you know my 16,000 votes. You know what I stood for on the Senate floor. And I don't back down. And if I mess up, I'll tell you. And if I get it wrong, I will tell you, or I'll own up to it. And we're going to move forward. We're going to take the conservative movement to the next level. And we need a leader to do that here in the state. Ted is providing that. I mean, it's interesting how the people are ducking for cover up there in Washington. Well, we need that same leadership here, and this is an historic election. You realize we're going to have a new governor, a new attorney general, a new controller, a new ag commissioner, and a new land commissioner, and my hope is a new lieutenant governor. But no other state that I can find in the history of the nation has literally changed out every statewide official in their party. First of all, you'd have to have a party that has every position. Secondly, you'd have to have to find a party that, we're not talking about general election where someone loses to a Democrat, because we're not going to lose to a Democrat. Well, in fact, someone's been talking about, there was an article yesterday that Wendy Davis may run for lieutenant governor, and I'm thinking, that would just be sweet. I would love that. I mean, I have to get by the primary and the runoff first, but I would love taking on Wendy Davis. I debated her a lot of times before. I would just love it. And that would be, in fact, there was the Texas Monthly says game on and has a picture of her on the cover, and we kind of had a little fun with it today, and we called it game over. They made, and I know the Tea Party primarily focused on fiscal issues, but on the life issue, and I know many of you are pro-life and in this group and many of the Tea Party groups, but on that bill, even the vast majority, even the Huffington Post was 2-1 against late-term abortions. And then women's health care, we're lifting up the standards of health care, and the RE46 are making doctors follow the rules of prescriptions. There was no way you could be against that bill. And so when the filibuster happened, it definitely elevated her to be a star. She raised $1 million since the filibuster, unbelievable. And now she's a rock star. But at the end of the day, I actually think this is hurting the Democrat Party. Because they were the ones who were radical, not us. And their followers, not all, but many of their followers were the ones who were radical the other night, not our folks. And I think a lot of, this is a deciding moment. And so I hope Wendy runs for something statewide, because number one, we'll take that seat in Fort Worth, because there's a good conservative Tea Party person running up there. And then secondly, she will lose, whether she runs for lieutenant governor, attorney general, governor, or against John Cornyn. She will lose, because we've always heard about the sleeping giant. The Tea Party movement has been the sleeping giant, and you're all awake. You make a difference. You change the outcome of elections. I remember telling Julie the first time I met her with 11,000 people at Sam Houston Racetrack when she invited me to speak. I said, you all can change any election you want, and as you team up with people around the state. But the other side is the church. 50% of Americans say they go to church on a regular basis. Of those 50% of Americans, 50% of those are registered to vote, roughly. And 50% of those show up to vote. That means 3 out of 4 people who say they go to church on a regular basis don't vote. You know, when you block walk, you see the list. Not a lot of people out there voting. I think that sleeping giant has been awakened to this issue too. So with that, let me take any questions. Yes, sir, in the back.
Sir, who are you going to support for Attorney General?
I'm going to stay out of that race. I have my own statewide race to run. You know, truthfully, and I think everybody else will. Right now you have Smitherman, Paxton's not in, may get in, and Dan Brandt. Let's just say I want a conservative doing that. Okay. I'm going to support conservatives all across the board, but quite seriously, you know, I'm going to stay out of those other statewide races this time. I've learned some, you know, I learned a few things along the way.
Yes, I just have a question about C-scope. I don't
Yes.
know, but my question is a tax question.
Okay.
They use state funds to develop it,
Yes.
and then they use state funds for schools to buy it, and I find that to be really, really a bad idea altogether. and not to mention what's in it. So what is happening in regards to that?
Well, you know, this was a great victory for the grassroots. I was campaigning because I was, you know, the way the Senate works, you have a 4-year term, but my term ended in, my term went from 2006 to 10. Well, then because redistricting, then we all had a 2-year term, and then we all drew straws to divide us up 2 and 4. And so I've actually been running like a house member here with these 2-year terms. So I was up last time as well, and I was out in down on Clay Road, the Pine Forest Country Club, at an event like this, and a lady came up to me with a stack like this, and she said, "Senator, you need to," this was like a year and a half ago, and I really didn't know much about C-scope, and so I said, "Man, if you can reduce it down to give me a page summary or 2, I said, I don't have time to read all that." So she did. And then I met with a few other people, and I thought, okay, is some of this real or not real? And because I don't believe everything I see on the internet, and sometimes we get out there and we get in front of an issue and we're, oh, sorry, the facts weren't right. So I went very carefully, and so I finally met with some of the people who were anti-C-scope, and I said, look, here's what I promise I will do as education chair. I will have a hearing on it as one of my first hearings, and let's see how it develops. And so when my first hearing was a joint hearing with Homeland Security on protecting our schools. The first hearing I had as education chair was on C-scope. And there are 9 members on the education, and no one knew about C-scope. And I know the members were thinking, okay, this is what happens when we get a grassroots, Tea Party, conservative guy as chairman. Now we're going to spend our time wasting on this, or C-scope. And I knew if I started out by, and I had the C-scope people up there, I knew if I started out by saying, tell me about calling the Tea Party patriots terrorists, tell me about teaching Islam and a lesson this thick and Christianity and a lesson this thick, I knew it would look like I was kind of one of the people that some of the people up there don't like. And so I took a different approach. I took a business approach to it because I did my homework and research, and they formed C-scope illegally. Very clear. So the first question I had after they did their dog and pony show for 10 minutes to the 3 directors, they said, tell me something. I said, who gave you permission to file and start this nonprofit? And they looked at me like, what are you talking about? I said, no, who gave you permission? Because you know it's illegal. I don't know if I said it's illegal. I said, but you can't do that without the permission of the legislature. You can't, as a public entity, go out and take public dollars and start something that's for-profit or non-profit. You can't do that without permission. We allow that, and the legislature gives permission from time to time. And so I started down that road. They couldn't answer the questions, and then they couldn't answer any questions, and it went downhill from there. At the end of the day, and thanks to Steve's help and the members in the House, at the end of the day, C-scope lesson plans are gone, despite emails you may see out there. In fact, I'm told they're already down. They're supposed to go down the end of August. Could there be, we have 1,100 school districts, and there were in 877 of them. Could there be a principal that decides to defy the law or the contract? Yes. Could there be a teacher that's kept it? So, yes. Could there be a rogue supervisor? Yes. Out of 1,100, yeah, there could be some bad actors, but they're gone. And in fact, I've been working with the Attorney General on this to this whole time as well. We were about to ask for an audit of all the C-scope former players. Well, I won't say all of them. And you're going to see that that's going to happen in the very near future, because what we found out was they spent millions of your dollars without any contracts, which is also not the way you're supposed to do business, taxpayers. So the lesson plans are gone. C-scope was in 2 parts. One part was a management system for teachers to follow, and they can still do that. That wasn't the issue. The teachers or parents. The problem was with the lesson plans themselves. But I'd like to see the whole program gone. But these are the votes we had for now. So we take, and I think after the audit, you're going to see less and less people even want to be involved. Yes, ma'am.
Is it going to fall back under the domain of the School Board of Education?
Yes. Well, C-scope was never under the legislature's domain, the SPOE's domain, or the commissioner's domain. They were on their own out there. And like any private company, except they were a nonprofit, anyone can go out and pitch their caps and gowns to any, come up to any high school and say, here's my product, whether it's lesson plans or something else. And so they were kind of outside of that. And so the legislation I forget, Steve, what the name of the Senate bill, whatever it was, 18, it was not, I forget the number. I filed 83 bills, so I looked up my numbers. And it passed, which is the first time that the SBOE, which has purview over textbooks, but they've never had purview over lesson plans. And so they have that, but the lesson plans are now gone. So right now, there's nothing to review because the lesson plans are gone. But if they try to come back again, then we have to review. Next question. Yes, sir, Matt.
I actually have two questions. One about the electric meters and one about the property tax.
I'm sorry, say that again, sir. I was looking at.
I actually have two questions. One about the electric meters and one about the property tax.
What was the first, the electric?
The electric meters.
Oh, the electric.
Smart meters.
Smart meters, okay.
Yeah.
We'll take the second one first because that'll be easier.
No, it'll actually be harder.
The property tax is very simple.
No, property tax is going to be harder. Trust me.
The property tax, taxation through evaluation without representation is wrong. There's no relevancy with your ability to pay, and that's why people are forced out of their homes. So I really think it's a simple issue. We either have to have an appraisal cap lowering, or we have to have a revenue cap that triggers basically a seesaw so that you have an effective tax rate. So if this is your tax rate and your values go up here, then the tax rate needs to be offset.
It's not my question. My question on the property tax is this.
Yeah.
Are you going to attempt to put anything in the statutes, in the tax code, that allows a homeowner to sue an appraisal district for illegally putting private property, their home, on the appraisal rolls, when the appraisal district does it on their own?
Okay. Sir, to be very candid with you, I'm just not advised on where you're coming from and what that legal issue is. I'd have to look at it and see why you think they can't. They've obviously been doing it a long time, and if there's some legal argument you think that can be made otherwise, I'm happy to, you can give me that information. I'm just not advised on that.
I'll meet with you tonight because I have it.
Okay, thank you.
The second question is this. On the smart meters, did anybody think in the Senate or in the legislature at all to expand that 4-month period where people get the money in the summertime to include the entire year? Because right now, that program is only for 4 months.
Again, I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but I just have to go back and look at what you're talking about specifically. But on the smart meters, there are some people that are very concerned, and I think that people ought to have a right to disconnect if they wish. Now, what the electric companies have said, if you do, there'll be a charge to disconnect you. And the issue, I think, is settled down somewhat. I checked with the PUC, and I think last year, and I stand to be corrected, and I haven't seen the latest numbers, out of the millions of homes we have in meters out there, I think they had less than a dozen complaints. Some people were unhappy, but specifically, and they were trying to address them. The electric companies were trying to address them, and so that thing will work itself out. But I don't know about the 4 months. So you've asked me 2 questions I don't have the answer to.
There's a woman right now I know in just outside of Dallas
Yes.
that, according to the contract from whatever company they use, like in Houston and Harris County, it's Centerpoint Energy. Well, she found the specific section of code or a section in her contract that says she can pull the electric meter provided she gives notice. Well, she
I
gave
just don't know. I wish I could. Whenever I get questions like that, I just need to do the research. I would be less than candid if I told you you're right or you're wrong. So it's like the lady that came to me about C-scope. I said, man, just give me the information, let me look into it. You know what? She was right, and that victory was not because of me or Steve or the legislature. It was because of the grassroots and brave school teachers that took a chance of losing their job and stepped forward. Let me finish something on the property tax real quick, since you brought it up. Here's the thing I want you to think about why we have to address it. If you live in a home, I'm just going to use easy math, $200,000. Some of you live in a more expensive, some of you live in a less expensive. If you live in a $200,000 home today and you're paying $3 a hundred, you're paying $6,000 for your property taxes. If they're able to go up at 8% a year, every 9 years they will double. And I think there's a smart crowd, you all know the rule of 72, whatever you divide by 72, it doubles. So if something goes up 9% a year, 9 and 72 is 8. That means in 8 years it doubles. And so if you go up 9% a year, I think we're going to get back to those percentages. That means in 8 years, your $200,000 home would be valued at $400,000, and your taxes just went from $6,000 to $12,000. And then it means in another 8 years, it would go from $400,000 to $800,000, and now your taxes are $24,000 a year. And this is a train wreck. that Texas is going to have to come to grips with. You know, the train was taken off the tracks by the downturn in the economy, and that's not a good way to solve a problem. And because we had kind of 0 or 1% increase. Now, the Woodland's a little different, it's a very high growth area. You may have seen, even during the downturn, a little increase. But we're going to get back to 8, 9, 10% increases. And as I tell folks when they retire, if your property taxes are even $10,000 a year, and I don't know where you get 4 and 5% money today, but if you get 2% money today, you have to have $500,000 in the bank just to pay your property taxes that you never touch. And we need to solve this problem. We can't wait. And that's going to be, we're going to need leadership to make this a priority. I'm going to make it a priority on the campaign trail. And if we win the election, which I'm hopeful we can do, and I think we will do, then the legislators are going to know, gosh, darn, Patrick won on that issue. I guess we got to pay attention. And that will be helpful. Another question? Yes, ma'am. So, I'm sorry. Well, you know, the state put in the 10% appraisal cap, and I've never been able to figure out why. And you know, when I was on the radio in 1997, I think it passed. There's Ben Strucy on the back end. Ben, you got here from the radio station very quickly. Thanks for coming by. And I think it was 97 or 98, but I just remember looking at that. And again, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I have some common sense, and I've always been good at math and math models. Because, you know, radio, you know, I have so many minutes a day, so many commercials I can sell. I have to sell so many commercials at so much money to pay my bills and make a profit. It's real simple. However it works, there's a box, you know what I mean? And that's life, you know, most things. And so I looked at this and I said, wait a minute, if it can go up 10% a year, every 7.2 years it would double. And if you look from 1997 to 2007, pretty much across the board, home values doubled and property taxes doubled. And so the state would make that change, and I think it would be a constitutional amendment to make that change, but I'm not positive. I'd have to go back and double check that. But the state would make that change through legislation, or if we put in a revenue cap. Now, all revenue cap means is the same way of solving the problem, and that is that if a county budget or city budget gets to a certain point, then they have to have an offset of the tax rate, or they have to come back to you and say, look, just like a school district does, we need this. Here's why we need it. Will you support it? And that's really what we should be doing. We shouldn't allow budgets to grow without your direct input. And there are a lot of county commissioners and county judges who support that, and there are some who oppose it. But we just have to do it. It's going to hurt our economy long term, because we'll have more people moving. You know, people come in here from out of state, and we're moving $1,200 a day, and they love that we don't have any income tax, and then they look at that property tax bill and say, my goodness, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, and you know, who wants to pay, even if your home is paid for and you retire, who wants to pay $10,000 or $15,000 a year for the rest of your life in property taxes? So, time for one more question, or two more? Okay, about until 10 to. Yes, sir.
Hi, Dan Patrick.
Hello, what is your first name?
Walter.
Hey, Walter.
You know me.
I know.
Stu said knows me too.
Now the voice sounds familiar on the radio.
Hear my voice.
Yeah, there you go,
Hey,
Walter.
listen.
Sorry, we have to go to a commercial break. I'll be right back. Hold on for just a second. Be right back.
That's what you've done.
Yeah. We can run a spot here, Ben, for Ability Trees, or LASIK surgery, or Texas hearing aids.
Listen, I deserve it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's money. I go back. You really are an exciting personality. I'm telling you, successful, and I just say that.
Thank you.
And I go back with your sportscaster for Channel 11. If you want to talk about that wonderful live operation with Dr. Mobley, I'm not going to funniest things I've ever. But
That probably won't be on my campaign literature.
that was just hilarious. I told Dr. Mobley that he only played again on his program.
You know, he does every year. I'm going to ask you, maybe not this year. That was the live, if you're wondering, for those of you who moved in the neighborhood, we had a vasectomy live on the air. And it was amazing. That story ended up in Time Magazine. I ended up on Armed Forces Radio. I ended up doing interviews in China. It was the most amazing thing. But it was the point was to show men instead of women having to have tubal ligations, all those issues to show, look guys, I can do it while I'm doing a radio show. It's not that big of a
Well,
deal.
you can take a lot of votes from the women from Wendy Davis.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that.
That's part of your campaign.
Yeah.
But there's so much here, but
You're gonna get in trouble.
I want to
Yes,
ask
sir.
you this. You explained, you said you supported diversity.
Yeah.
You didn't give the reasons why you did it. And they have proposed, the reason why you did it is because you would have not had any power in the Senate if you had opposed the laws, all right? For the city.
As I said earlier, so I'm not disingenuous. And look, early on in that race, God does work. He says he will bring us the right leaders. And I've really never said this before, but look, Ted won in a perfect storm. If the election had been held the second week of March, I don't know that he would have gotten there. Had some other things not happened, that was an amazing win, and I feel like God's hand was in that. And so early on, just like a lot of people didn't know him, I just felt at the time that David was the most qualified, and I really thought Ted would be our next Attorney General, is what I really thought, and I thought that would be great. So I'm not going to cop out. I cast my vote, and I said I cast my vote. It's probably true. Had I been all in for Ted, that we'd still have 12 or 15 StarCasts. Maybe. I don't know. Might have been a different education, sure. I don't know. There's no quid pro quo, and that wasn't part of the deal, but that's possible. I don't know. Again, I cast my vote. I own it. Stick to it. That's all. But I think you took all the, as we say, we're out of time on the show. Last question in the back.
Part of the education thing, just a mundane question.
Yes.
In that bill, there was something called laboratories. What is the definition of a laboratory with respect to alternate course presentations in high school, particularly along the industrial way?
Yeah, can you help me more about in what context? And again, I
It says that
wrote the bill.
the laboratories will be provided, and then there's some discussion about $200 a square foot and so forth, which isn't going to cover very much, but
Right.
really I was after, what was the definition of a laboratory? Is it a shop for a high school that kids can go into and work? Is it, what's the intent?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at every piece of it. Again, after I think we probably cast 4,000 votes in a lot of language. To be sure I'm not wrong on that. One of the things that we were concerned about, and we addressed a number of things in that bill, and our charter bill, which we didn't talk about, is going to be a great school choice bill. That's another issue in my campaign. I believe we need school choice. I believe parents have a right to send a child to the school of their choice. And one of the ways we can break the back of these failing schools in our inner cities is to get those kids out of those schools and give those parents a choice. They should have that choice, whether it's a charter or a private school. But when they did the 4x4, I said, we all did it, but when the 4x4 went in several years ago, a lot of the schools said, wait a minute, you're putting an unfunded mandate on us because you're requiring more science and more laboratories. But the reason I'm asking that question is because we also want to talk about the laboratory of ideas and the consortium that's working for schools to come up with different ideas. So I'd have to go back and look at the context of it, forgive me. But schools, if the state said, look, I don't like it when Washington tells us what we have to do, and I don't like when we tell the local school districts or local counties or cities, you have to do this. If we require you to do something, then we ought to partner in a way to pay for it, or we ought to pay for it. Don't take it down to the local taxpayer. So I just have to go back and look at it. I'll tell you what, if you will give me your name and number before I leave, I'll get back with my education team and we'll get you an answer in a couple of days. I think, okay, yes, sir.
Mr. Patrick, as a former illegal alien, my main concern is protecting the border. I don't believe that we need to change and apply more laws. I think if we just apply the ones that we already have,
You're right.
we will make a big impact. As a lieutenant governor, what changes do we make?
Well, when I was first elected in 2007, I sat in a budget meeting, and there was zero in the budget to help our 16 or 17 counties on the border protect the border. And there wasn't any money in the budget for DPS. And I stood up and said, I'm going to vote on the budget. We don't have any money in there. And 3 other senators stood with me. And so we got some money in the budget to pay for overtime for what, look, the sheriffs along the border are all Democrats, but they're trying to protect our state and their citizens. And I've been down the border several times working with them on the overnight shift and going, they're driving they're driving cars that have 100,000 miles on them. Mercury Marquis are nice cars, but they don't do very well over rough terrain chasing somebody. They, for the most part, have their sons or cousins working with them. One guy's covering a big territory. It is pretty scary to be out on the border at night by yourself, outgunned. And so it was clear we had to get these. They know their communities, and so we need to get them some help. Number two, we didn't have enough presence with state troopers. I believe we need to have more presence with the National Guard on the border as well. And yes, enforce the federal laws, but in terms of the state, we just need a bigger law enforcement presence, and we need to give DPS, and we need to give local police, and we need to give, and the Rangers, it's a small unit, they do a great job. And again, there are a lot of things we can do as the second line of defense, and in some cases with the border sheriffs, they're the first line of defense. If you look at the border, I think we have 19 or 20 crossings, and that's where most of the illegals cross. But there's a lot of no man's land up there as well. And we've done a better job. There was zero, I don't want to say zero, but very little communication between the state of Texas and Border Patrol in 2007. And it's a big improvement now. There's no question there's a big improvement. But success is never final. And it really bothers me when I hear people say, the border's secure. Because we know that. So there are a lot of things that can be done. Yeah, and no inflation, and our schools are great. I mean, look, success is never final. As conservative Republicans, we've done a lot of good things, but there's a lot left to be done, and we need to take it to that next level. And I think this is going to be a battle over points of view within our own party. And I'm going to stick with those freshman House members and our freshman senators, and I'm going to help them all I can. When someone asks me about a statewide election, I'm going to stay out of those, but in these local elections, because look, they're coming after some of these freshmen. They're coming after them, and we need to hold the line. We need to stand our ground in a different way. So with that, thank you all very much. I brought some movies. I think all of you have the Heart of Texas movie, but if you don't, they're out there. Take one, one per couple. And if you've already had it and you want to give one to someone else, please feel free. And it's a great Texas story that we did a couple of years ago. So thank all of you very much. I'm going to need your help. We need to win Montgomery County, and your help with friends across the state. I have to get kind of back into campaign mode. I'm still kind of in session mode, and we're going to get geared up. And your support, quite frankly, as I ticked off the boxes of should I run or not run, you were one of the boxes. You were one of the boxes. And so I'm telling my wife it's all your fault. Okay, so thank you all very much.